Tiffany, and if you don't know me, I get to lead one of our 11th and 12th grade tribes. And tonight, I get to share about 1st and 2nd Timothy with everybody. Yeah. So, 1st Timothy was, honestly, like when I was in high school, this was one of my favorite books in the Bible. We'll get to it in a little bit, a verse that was really impactful for me. But yeah, should we get in? Dig in? Okay. All right. 1st and 2nd Timothy, it was written by Paul to Timothy, who at the time was a young pastor in Ephesus. Was everybody around for when we talked about Ephesians a couple weeks ago? Same church. They were still messing up. So Paul sends Timothy to Ephesus, and he sent Timothy there to kind of call out some of the bad things this church was doing. And we kind of get to see this relationship with Paul and Timothy unfold. Paul is what we would call a mentor to Timothy. So he's giving him some instruction and some encouragement and kind of helping him become this young pastor, this leader at the time. So kind of looking more at just like 1 Timothy first, which is the first letter he wrote to Timothy. In this first letter, we see Paul talking a lot about false teachers, a lot of false teachings. They're spreading incorrect information about Jesus, and Paul's like, we cannot have this. Like, someone's got to go confront them. And Timothy's a young guy. He's a young pastor, and Paul is telling him, hey, you've got to go confront them. You've got to call them out. And through this letter, we see Paul just encouraging Timothy that even though he's young, that doesn't necessarily matter. Regardless of how young he is, he still has a calling. He still has a purpose, and he can be an example to these corrupt leaders in Ephesus. A verse that really stuck out to me, here we go. 1 Timothy 4:12. This was my favorite verse in high school because it literally is speaking to young people. And it says, it's on the screen. Don't let anyone think less of you because you are young. Be an example to all believers, old believers, young believers, in-between believers, all of them. And be an example to all believers in what you say, in the way you live, in your love, in your faith, in your purity. We could easily spend all night dissecting what that means. We won't, don't worry. But I think this verse, it could be really impactful for you guys as high schoolers too. It was impactful for me as a high schooler. You can be an example in the way you act, in the way you live, in the way you love others, the way you share your faith. And I think it's important to know that you guys are examples in your schools, in your homes, in your jobs, wherever you're at. And that's really important. So that's kind of my big takeaway that I want you guys to get from 1 Timothy. 2 Timothy, this letter written about a year after. So a year has taken place. A lot of stuff has happened. Paul is now sitting in a prison. So life's not going super great for Paul at this time. And they can, looking into like the time of writing 2 Timothy, they believe this was Paul's last letter that he wrote, but it's also his like most personal letter that he wrote. He is lonely. He's sitting in prison. A lot of his friends and people, his coworkers, people he's met in the faith, they don't want to associate with him anymore because he's sitting in prison, which that could get you a bad rap. He wasn't in prison for bad things. He was in prison for, sharing Jesus, and the people at the time didn't like that. And so a lot of his coworkers, a lot of the people who knew him have abandoned him, and he's really reaching out to Timothy as someone who he has mentored, who he looks at as a son, who he cares very deeply about. And he's like, Timothy, I want you to come join me, come see me. Like, I need you to come here. But in the middle of this chapter, which 2 Timothy is way shorter than 1 Timothy, we see Paul still with this same idea of, no, you first have to call out these false teachers. Like, we cannot let these people keep talking bad about Jesus, spreading just wrong things, focusing on the wrong things. That's not what Jesus' church is supposed to look like. So he reminds Timothy, hey, you have to do this. You have to confront them. And he also, in it, is challenging Timothy to accept his calling as a leader in the church, a leader in the faith, as a follower of Jesus. Like, Timothy, you're a leader, and you have to own it. You have to accept that. And I think that's such a big thing. Like, sometimes we need to accept that we're a leader. Just like Timothy, like Paul was telling, like, we need to receive that and accept it and move forward in it. And kind of to sum up 1st and 2nd Timothy with this last statement, Timothy should be bold, hold to the truth, be disciplined, and be ready for hardship. And I think that's true for each and every single one of us in here too, is that we need to be bold, we need to hold to the truth, be disciplined in our faith, and be ready for it to get hard, unfortunately. But now, I would like to invite Corey up here. Thanks for coming up here. Corey.
Hi.
Thanks for coming up here. Like, this is bold. This is the wrong spot. Like, it's bold for you to come up here and have courage to come up here and share your thoughts on 1 Timothy, and I'm excited you're up here. You don't have to be. All right. Should we start out with an easy question before we get into the nitty-gritty of it? Yeah. Okay. Would you rather eat what John the Baptist ate for 24 hours, which is locusts and honey, or wash Jonah's laundry after he gets out of the whale? I'm not eating those. Is
I'm not eating bugs. Like, that's disgusting. So I just rather just wash the laundry, get it done and over with.
I agree. Like, I'm on laundry duty. You're not catching me eating a bug. It's never gonna happen. I will die first. All right, Corey, you ready? Okay. Tell us about your experience reading 1st and 2nd Timothy. Like, how'd you find yourself up here with me?
Hallie, my tribe leader, and Sammy trying to kind of persuaded me to get up here.
We call it aggressive cheerleading.
Sammy gave me no choice. And I actually read this in 45 minutes. It was really short. And it was actually one of the first books I actually finished.
It's a good one.
But I couldn't put it down, and I just read it, right? 45 minutes.
That's awesome. Not bad. So while you're reading these 2 books, what's something that, like, really stuck out to you from them?
It kind of, like, wasn't like the other books to me. It wasn't as boring. I actually read it all. It kind of related to, like, now, I think, how Paul was talking about these false teachers, like worship, like talking about godliness, how they would talk about the worth of money. And I think that kind of relates to how influencers are just, like, doing things for clout nowadays. And
Clout is a new word I learned this week.
like, doing things for likes, to be popular, followers, money.
Yeah, so there was a verse that you kind of, like, had mentioned when we were talking, 1 Timothy 4:7, where it's, you know, Paul is talking about train yourself to be godly. What do you think it means to be godly?
I think for me, to be godly is to live with the hope of God and to be faithful to Him and to follow instructions that He gives us.
Yeah, I think those are all good places to start. What does it mean for you to train yourself in this? Like, how do you go about training yourself to be godly?
By preaching, worshiping, praying, reading the Bible. Just
Who you preaching to?
public, family, friends.
All people that probably need to hear a good word, right?
Yeah.
All right. What do you learn when you read the Bible? What are you learning from it?
It somehow, like, kind of tells you what's wrong and what's right and tells you what to do. My family doesn't go to church. They're not really religious, so I kind of just look to the Bible for those things.
Yeah. Which is the best place to look, right? All right. In 2 Timothy 3:16 through 17, it says, all Scripture is inspired by God and is useful to teach us what is true and to make us realize what is wrong in our lives. It corrects us when we are wrong and teaches us to do what is right. God uses it to prepare and equip his people to do every good work. Where is there a place Jesus is working on you, correcting you, and trying to make you more disciplined?
I think a great example is social media, like TikTok. There's some things that you probably shouldn't be watching or avoiding, like on TV shows. Like a common one nowadays is Euphoria, and it kind of talks about drugs and like how you're persuaded, like pressured to do that, and like how it pulls you in. So I think you just stay away from it.
Good advice. You should all delete TikTok. Both books of 1st and 2nd Timothy talk a lot about how the church isn't living up to the name of Jesus. Jesus has a reputation, and these people are muddying it up. So Paul gives Timothy the charge to go be bold and tells him how to act. How do you think people who go to youth group should act? And what would be your charge to all of us?
I think when you walk in the youth group, you should know what's right and wrong and like the difference. I also think you should be a leader, kind of, which means being inspiring, being confident, talk about the right things. Being energetic and being real. What I mean by being real is like you're accountable to God. Like when you wear your cross, you just follow like what he thinks that you should do, and you should live by that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I have a really important question. Do you desire to be a better Christian, Corey?
Yeah, it's not. What are you doing here?
Right. What are we all doing here? Okay. So we have one more thing to share. So we thought it would be fun, we were talking, to write a letter to Corey and mimic kind of how Paul wrote this letter to Timothy. Most of you probably know, I've known Corey for about 6 years now. I met her through her mom, and I've got to watch her grow over the last 6 years and come to Awake and just really become a better Christian and learn more about Jesus and ask really hard questions sometimes, really hard questions. So I took some time and I wrote First Corey, a new addition to the Bible. JK, because we can't add to the Bible. She has not heard this letter yet either. We saved it for this moment. So I'm going to read this letter to Corey. Ready? All right. Corey. First Corey. This letter is from Sammy, a servant of Jesus. I'm writing to Corey, a daughter of the faith. Corey, I thank God for you, that he desired our paths to intercept. There is a boldness in you, a curiosity about you. I see your desire to understand Jesus and what it means to follow him. Stay true to that sense to wonder. Keep following it. Corey, you have a calling on your life. You were created on purpose for a purpose. I pray as you navigate the seasons ahead that God reveals that calling to you. I see a true leader in you. I want to challenge you to be better. Be better than those around you. You can be better, one choice at a time. I want to remind you, you have a perfect Father in heaven, a Father that shows up always and to everything in your life, a Father who loves you beyond measure. Corey, cling to your faith. Keep learning. Keep being bold. Don't let comparison steal your joy. You are destined for better things. May Jesus always walk beside you, and his grace be with you always. Did you change your mind about praying?
No. Okay. All right. She took some time into
I
this,
made it look like it was from the Bible. I did take some time. It was fun. I encourage all of you to give it a shot. All right. Well, I'll pray and we'll head off to Tribes. Okay. Hey, Jesus. First, I just want to thank you for Corey and her boldness and her courage, Lord, to get up here and share in front of her peers. That's not an easy task. God, I just pray that students walk out of this room tonight knowing that they can also have a boldness about them and a courage about them, that they can be examples wherever it is that they go, Lord, that their age isn't a factor in showing the world you and who you are, Jesus. Just be with the conversations that are happening tonight, Lord, and I just pray that there's a new fire ignited in students to go out and be bold and to be like Timothy was and to call out corrupt, untrue things about Jesus, Lord, that you would just empower them and take it with them to their schools, their homes, their workplaces, wherever they should go, Lord, that they would just follow you in that. God, we thank you and we praise your name. Amen.